We'll start today with our command staff, Deputy Chief Sidney Collier, who's in charge of support services, Deputy Chief Sybil Elamine Jones, who's newly promoted to the Deputy Chief over patrol services, and Deputy Chief Albert Stokes, in charge of business services. Some more moves here on the RPD Senior Command Majors. So we have Major Ronnie Armstead, Major Jody Blackwell, two new additions, Major Donald Davenport, Chief of Staff, Major Adrian Gardner, Patrol Services Area 1, she was recently promoted, and Major Daryl Goins in charge of Area 2 Patrol Services. So here's a snapshot of our violent crime. Homicide is up 8%. That's 64 this past year versus 59, and I want to explain that number a little bit. Some of you may have remembered our last murder was on December 14th, number 63 in Fairfield Court. We hadn't had another murder since this year on the 16th of January, but we added another number. So that goes back to death investigation that we investigated on Richmond Highway 2900 block. Originally, as we were investigating, it appeared to be one thing. As we conducted our investigation, got some things back from the lab, we determined that that too is going to be a murder. So while it took place in August, we are now classifying it as a homicide, so that's where we're at 64, but the actual killing took place on in August 30th. So robberies up 2%, but so from 223 to 215. Rapes up from 61 to 52 for a 17% increase. Aggravated assaults are down. Those are all felony-related assaults. Robbery commercials also down 11%, and overall violent crime down 7%. I'm going to go into these numbers a little more detail so you can get some perspective on it with a threshold. So one of the things we like to do is not just look at year on year. That sometimes doesn't tell the whole story. This is our 7-year threshold, and it could go back further, but we feel like it's most probative to just look at 2017. So you see the steady decline. We are, again, 1,018 violent crimes totally for this year. The average is 1,139 if you average all those together, so well below the average and a good steady decline for all of our violent crime. The murder threshold, again, 7 years, fairly consistent with an average of 66, but you'll see the outlier in 2021 where we were at 90. This year we finished with 64, 59 the previous year, which was low for us. But the big number for us where we saw the biggest drop and what drove our violent crime reduction this year is non-fatal shootings. So if you look at the reports we're providing you, you have to combine non-fatal shootings for aggravated assaults and robbery non-fatal shootings and to combine to the number of 190 people who were shot and wounded in our city this year. And when you combine those, you'll see the significant reduction, and we'll be able to talk about why we think that is. And here's some of it. Like I said, 26% reduction over last year, 257 shootings, 190. Some of those, another interesting stat that we track and we always try to figure out why is why the numbers are down. And last year we had a significant increase in multiple victim shootings. So 33 incidents in 2022, 80 victims, all in multiple incidents. If you look at this year, we did much better. Now, I say that knowing that we still had the Altria mass shooting with 7 people shot totally, and 2 of those were killed during those shootings. But still, 39% reduction in incidents and 36% reduction in actual victims in those multiple shootings. That's where you really get the numbers where we saw last year a really high number of non-fatal shootings. And some of those we attribute to this Glock switch. And I've talked about this previously. I'll play a little video, but it's an auto sear. We seized 12 in 2022. This year we seized a total of 18 of those devices. They go on the back of a Glock and turn what is the most popular and common firearm in America. The one I'm carrying now, a Glock 17, will turn that into a fully automatic machine gun where you pull the trigger one time and the bullets come out. And I'll show you a little video of it. But seizing more of those, adding legislation, we think can help continue that trend of lowering our non-fatal shooting rates. So to look at that, you understand how that person's hand is ratcheting back and forth. So the intended targets aren't even always hit with those. They're incredibly dangerous. They don't serve a purpose, and we're working with the Commonwealth Attorney and the General Assembly to try to address it through legislation in state court. Here's a recent example. It was just released yesterday. You may have seen it. The U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia highlighted one of our cases that was brought to bear, an individual who was found with this weapon, and you can see the little red mark on there on the back of that Glock, a Glock switch. We were able to arrest that individual. That night, we couldn't arrest the person ourselves, so we had to call the ATF. So ATF agents came out and helped us in the investigation. We were able to charge that person federally, and we were able to get a conviction and a 2-year sentence for a person with that firearm. And again, you saw how dangerous those weapons can be. A lot of our drive down of the gun violence too this year, the non-fatal shootings, we believe took place during Operation Safe Summer. And I won't rehash all the data because I did that at the last briefing we had, but just a snapshot of it. You can see some of the numbers, 176 firearms seized, 10 Glocks. We had all those partners, 30% reduction in murder and non-fatal shootings. So that's a gun violence stat where we combine our gun-related homicides, gun-related non-fatal shootings, 90 in 2022 during that same time period in that summer, and 63 in 2023. And you can see the numbers for those violent crime as well. So overall, really successful program that we hope to continue this summer. We're already talking with our partners about the plans for this upcoming summer to try to address some of our violence. And obviously, traffic is a main concern. I'm going to be going to the 6th District community meeting tonight, and I guarantee you there will be, most of the questions will not be about gun violence. They will be about traffic, speeding, crashes, that sort of thing. And we know how important it is. And people that die in crashes have families just like people who die by the bullets. So it's very important. And we know that the Richmond Police Department is not the complete answer, but we do have a piece of the puzzle when it comes to enforcement. So here are our traffic fatalities, where we did have an 11% reduction over last year, but that number of 25 is still way too high. Another note that I'll say, if you go on the traffic highway safety, you might see a higher number. So just to be clear, the city of Richmond had 7 other events, so a total of 35 on if you add the highways within the city limits. Virginia State Police investigated those. So in 2022, there were 7 additional fatal crashes that VSP investigated. And then in 2023, we investigated 25 fatal crashes, and there were 4. So if you add those two together, it's a bigger reduction of 17%. But for our investigations, 11% drop is important. We need to continue that trend, and part of that starts with our ability to enforce traffic laws and slow folks down. I'll talk about what we're doing with that. As I've spoken about before, we have 2 rehires that do nothing but come out and ride motorcycles and write speeding tickets in our complaint areas. So they work on complaints that come from the community and our city council members. We also, so those officers are working part-time and just come in when they want and run radar, and are getting a lot of tickets for us because we've been unable to fully staff that unit based upon our current staffing levels. And when we look at our summons and enforcement strategy, citations and summonses, we also saw a 13% increase in these important summonses. So 10,731 in 2022, we're up to 12,151 for a 13% increase, focusing on those, with the vast majority of those coming with speeding, reckless driving, and signal or regulatory sign violations. So pushing that out there, trying to enforce that with the goal of slowing folks down. In our safety camera program, many of you reported on that. So here are the areas where they're going to go. We're allowed to have 13 locations, 26 actual cameras. That's what it looks like. They have not gone live yet. There's been some setbacks regarding it. Apparently the company we're using was sold to another company. That created some logistical problems. We have to get the blinking lights set before we can start enforcing the traffic. Otherwise, the cases will get dismissed. So we have to. It's just been more challenging than we thought. Our goal is still sometime in February, but that's still up in the air right now. Now to property crime, where we're not having as much success. Obviously, I talked about a 7% reduction in violent crime. Property crime is something that we're still struggling with. So while arson and overall burglaries are way down, our overall larcenies are up 5%. Auto theft up 68%, and that is driving a lot of our property crime for an overall increase of 9%. And we'll go into the details on it, but this is where we're struggling this year. So theft from motor vehicles, always a challenge for Richmond, but this is our biggest number. So when we look at our numbers of property crime, we saw an increase even in a big number of those. So 2,705 this year as compared to 2,360. So, and even an increase of, so that's an increase of 15%, but a 21 increase in those folks that are leaving their vehicles unlocked. So we always ask that question during our reporting process. So we would ask people in the community to not only lock their doors, but not leave anything visible, because we also see smashed windows. And the key is making sure that you don't make it attractive to thieves. This is a stat that's trending in the right direction, but I want to be really clear. In 2022, we had 714 guns stolen out of cars. This year, it's a 10% reduction in 644, but 644 guns on our streets. Obviously, if you're a thief and you're breaking into someone's car, you are by definition a criminal in possession of a firearm. So these are guns and almost exclusively are totally preventable. And I'll have some examples on why we think this stat is so important. I think I mentioned it before, but it bears repeating. Obviously, I speak with chiefs of police from around the country. When I talk to chiefs out west, or I even had a conversation with a command staff member in Maryland who talked about the proliferation of ghost guns and privately manufactured guns. And they ask us about, well, aren't the majority of the guns the Richmond Police Department recovered, aren't they ghost guns? And I said, it's not even close. We have a few of them, but that's not a challenge. You can go to a car in our city and pull a real gun out of most cars, and it's totally unacceptable and preventable. So we don't see those 80, 70% of guns seized by police to be ghost guns. It's a very small number, and it's not a problem for us at this point. And firearm thefts from vehicles in our city, this is a heat map. As you can see, the blinking light there is the Shockoe Bottom. There's a couple reasons for that. Obviously, the Shockoe Bottom has a lot of nightlife. People bring guns down to the city. They go into clubs knowing that they're going to be searched or patted down or wanded, and they can't bring their guns in there, so they leave them in the car. So we're just begging people, if you come to the city, don't bring your guns to the Shockoe Bottom, because thieves know that, and it's as soon as packs of thieves get some success in this, they do more of it over and over again because they found guns, and that's the number one thing that they want out of these cars. And you can also see other lighted areas. So here, those are follow kind of our population trends too. Obviously, Richmond's a growing city. You're seeing apartment complexes in Scott's Addition and Old Town Manchester popping up. Those new folks to our city sometimes don't understand the importance of not leaving guns in your car like you may be able to do in a rural environment. But we just need folks to really think about the fact that we know the Second Amendment is a right, but it's also a responsibility. So if you own a gun, it's incumbent upon you to properly secure it. And we're trying to do our part to do that, but it's important that gun owners take basic steps to secure their weapons. Here's some of the face of it. We had 27 people accidentally shoot themselves this year, and 9 of those 26 were juveniles, or were accidentally shot. So they all didn't shoot themselves, but they were accidental shootings. And the most famous case is Marquand Nash Mitchell, 13-year-old young man who was killed, and we'll talk about that story, but also a 3-year-old boy towards the end of the year on Raven Street found his father's gun and accidentally shot himself, and he's gonna have a lifetime, this is not a graze wound for him, a lifetime of serious recovery. At least he survived, and so it's better than that. But both of those firearms, when we recovered those, both of those firearms were recovered from unlocked vehicles. We wanted to give you some quotes, and I just pulled these at random. So some quotes from Richmond Police reports of stolen firearms. So the first one will be, the victim stated that an unknown suspect stole his Glock 23 Generation 4 .45 caliber weapon out of his unlocked 2005 Mercedes. The victim stated that the unknown suspect also stole his bottle of Patron. So they're equating the fact that they left their bottle of tequila in there with the fact that they also left their .45 caliber pistol in there. Another one, a victim states that she left her Springfield Hellcat 9mm inside a Subaru in the glove compartment in a parking lot. She stated that she left the doors unlocked because the locks that they were unlocked because she didn't have the ability to lock the doors, so they were broken. But she still left her firearm in that car. And finally, a firearm was left in the victim's 2020 Malibu that was parked on a street. The victim stated that he left the vehicle unlocked accidentally and returned from dinner on 3/9/23. When he came outside on 3/10 to go to work, he noticed the armrest in the raised position and papers in the center console that were now on the driver's seat. The firearm that was kept under the driver's seat was obviously not located in the vehicle when the victim discovered that his car had been tampered with. And that is the report. And that gun, less than 24 hours later and less than a half a mile from where Marquand Nash Mitchell was killed, that's the gun that killed him. So that person has to live with the fact that they left their gun unattended in a car that was unlocked that was later used to kill a teen in our city. So what we're doing is the Richmond Police Department has partnered with DCGS and gotten grants for firearm vaults, firearm safes. We're giving those out to city residents. We give them at all of our precincts so that if an officer encounters a person or comes to a home and sees a firearm that's legal but it's not secured properly, they can notify their precinct commander and we'll go out there the next day and provide that Richmonder with a way to secure that weapon. So we're taking that step and we're asking everyone. You can call Dr. Gwen Andrews, who's part of our Richmond Community Mediators, at this cell phone number, and she will evaluate your request and get you the safe you need for your firearm. All right, so now we're going to be talking a little more about I talked about theft from motor vehicles. Now we're moving on to the second biggest scourge for us this year, and that's shoplifting. So if you look at our shoplifting trends going back to 2007, we even took more data. You can see this, and then in 2023 we're at 1818. 56% of all those took place at ABC stores. So that is literally driving all of our crime in certain neighborhoods, and it's an important challenge for us. And you know, we talk about it a lot on ways to address it, but it's very difficult. So we're working with ABC. We have we're going to start meeting on these high impacted stores and try to find a way to combat it and work with our Commonwealth Attorney when we find multiple offenders to make sure that they're held accountable in the courts. And then motor vehicle thefts. This is a trend also when I talk to chiefs around the country that is plaguing cities, a crime that we thought we had mainly addressed. If I were speaking to you 2 years ago today, I'd be talking about the fact that you need to not leave your cars running when it's cold, to not leave your keys in the car. That was essentially the only way you'd have a car stolen. But with Kia and Hyundai's and the well-publicized challenges with their ability to have the anti-theft device defeated, we saw a 68% increase in motor vehicle thefts. And we track these, and not all are successful. So every time someone breaks a steering column, this number reflects the fact that it's an attempted theft. But I don't want to minimize those. We count them towards our stats because we know exactly what the thief intended to do. But it also is incredibly expensive for the person who owns these cars, and incredibly time-consuming to get on the waiting list to have your steering column fixed. So it's a danger, and the people that are generally stealing these cars are not good drivers. They're involved in other crimes and involved in crashes, and inevitably we're finding that they're being involved in other crimes as well. And just again, to look at the graph, look at 3 years of data. So 2021, Hyundai and Kia represent the red line, 74 of our 734. Again, a very small fraction last year. This year, 848 of our 1,578 are either a Kia or a Hyundai. And it's incredibly challenging. We are utilizing technology to try to arrest thieves. License plate recognition has been a big help in arresting them, but the real answer is going to be a technological fix, which is occurring to make it harder to actually steal it. And then what we're trying to do, and James, you took my prop. Oh. Oh, here we go.
Yes, sir.
All right, so this is what we were able to work with Kia and Hyundai and have this this old-fashioned wheel lock, which not only will stop someone from stealing cars, but it's also a deterrent. So if they see it on there, we hope that thieves will go go to another car and leave these cars alone. So we're asking Richmonders, if you live in the city, if you have a Kia or a Hyundai, come by one of the 4 precincts. We have hundreds of them left. We will give you one for free. You just have to prove you live in the city and have one of these vehicles, and we're happy to do that. We're trying to think outside the box so we can minimize these thefts, and I think that it's just so important for us to try to get ahead of this, not only because of the property value, but as I said, these cars are sometimes used in other crimes and violent crimes. All right, some good news too. I want to talk about the catalytic converter thefts. So the law changed in July of 2023, where this was a very difficult crime for us to address because we could have officers stopping someone with a trunk full or a car full of catalytic converters, but we would have, because there's no VINs on them, we would have no way of knowing they're stolen. We knew in our, we could tell, like someone hacked them off with a Sawzall, but for us to be able to prove it, we had to prove that it came from a car. So the legislation changed to make it a Class 6 felony to possess it without being able to prove where you got it. So now, today, if our officers stop someone and we see a catalytic converter that's been cut off, they should have a receipt, or they should have some other documentation. If not, we can proceed on charges. We've also still had the program in partnership with Mark Smith of Midas Richmond to spray paint the catalytic converters. We've seen how that can work, where individuals have actually climbed under there and seen it, and it enables our scrap dealers to know right away that if they're trying to take one of these painted catalytic converters, that it's going to be stolen, and they can notify the police department. And again, here's the stats on it. So 73% reduction in catalytic converter thefts. Some of that's due to some key arrests, but I think a big part of it is the legislation enabling us to address it. We've tried all kinds of things, but it seems like this is working. I don't want to jinx it. We're still seeing it, but nowhere near the challenge that we had in previous years. So I'd like to go into accidental drug poisonings. This is a challenge for us, as it is in every American city. 111,000 people are estimated to die from overdoses, from opioid overdoses. Our department is reporting a reduction in these, but obviously think of 172 people. That's down from 209 of last year. That's the high. But 172 people, when you look at the numbers of crashes and murders, it doesn't even come close to that in our city. This is the #1 killer in our city, and it's almost exclusively fentanyl. And the biggest concern with fentanyl is that it can be pressed. Our detectives are seizing pill presses where you can press this fentanyl material into looking like Xanaxes or Percocets or other commonly prescribed medications, and you know exactly what you're getting. Not that those can't be dangerous too, but at least you know what you're getting. Some of these pills, people are thinking they're taking something, and they're really taking a dose of fentanyl, and they just never wake up, and it's killing generations of Americans. And our narcotics detectives have seized over 2,200 grams of fentanyl. DEA is very active in the city region to combat fentanyl trafficking, but it is an ongoing problem because it is cheaper than what we call real drugs like cocaine and heroin. It can be manufactured and put together with precursors, and is coming across our border and is again killing over 100,000 Americans a year, and doesn't seem to be slowing down. Something else we talk about a lot is in our crime prevention strategy is our community engagement. So many of you have attended our pop-up series. We're continuing that. We're working on our crime fighting strategy in Northside. So this pop-up event is going to be on March 28th, 2024 at 5 p.m. at Ann Hardy Park. These are always great events, and as I always say, we want our community seeing our officers interacting with our police department when crime scene tape's not up. It gives our ability to communicate and share information and make those genuine relationships important, and this is a good way that we do it. And that's once a month we do that, and then of course another week out of the month we do our community walks. We just did one last week on Broad Street. We had a great interaction. On February 22nd at 4 p.m. we're going to be meeting at Fairfield Court Elementary School. We're going to be doing a walk in Fairfield, and that's related to the last murder we had in Fairfield. It's that took place, again, that was homicide number 63. It took place on the 14th of December. And the victim's Ricky DeWitt, and we're hoping that's a case that we still haven't solved yet, and we're hoping to generate some more information and talk to the community there that's still struggling with that. So some of you have reported the fact that we now have our Capital City Intelligence Center open. I want to stress that it is a soft opening. We don't have all the equipment we need, or we have the equipment in there, but we don't have all the contracts and software that we need to really make it fully functional. But we intend on hiring our manager in the very near term, and so we've completed the interviews for that, and we're looking forward to that up and running. Utilizing technology is a force multiplier for us. We utilize it every day, and this will be a standard way for men and women in that center to support the officers in the field in an effective way. There's also a report that we talked about the rehire program. So last year we were able to hire 14 full-time officers back. We've hired 15 part-time officers back. We also got a full-time lateral from another jurisdiction, one of those. We're seeing an increase in our applications. They're up 63%, but we still need more. We're working on a bunch of different ways to try to attract people to this profession. Our current staffing is at 602. As many of you know, our authorized strength is 755. When I took over, we were at 603 in October of 2022, so we've been able to stabilize things and keep it from the hemorrhaging that we were experiencing. But it's still, we have to start building that those police officers back and building our department back. There's no substitute for men and women out in the field. So we're going to be working in a lot of different ways and partnering with a lot of local universities and military installations to try to get folks to be interested in this profession. Something I talked about earlier last year is this is the ICAT, so Integrating Communications Assessment and Tactics. We believe this training is cutting edge and it's best practice. It's designed with the ethics and values and proportionality in line with a core goal of sanctity of life being our mission. So when we encounter someone, this is designed to be an add-on to crisis intervention training. So it's the tactical side of crisis intervention training, which is usually verbal in nature. This teaches our officers through scenario-based training to collect information, assess the situation, threats and risks, to consider police powers and the agency policy while you're engaging in this, to identify options and determine the best course of action and act, review, and reassess. So the scenarios are to try to put our officers in the best position we can to use the least amount of force we need to encounter that situation. And as we're dealing with more and more folks who are struggling with mental health, this is just one of our training efforts, and all of our officers went through it. 536 of them have already been certified in it in 2023. So that was one of the goals we set at the beginning of last year that we were able to accomplish. And I went through the training myself. And I think it gives you a good perspective, because I think back to when I was trained as a police officer, and over 24 years ago, and certain things that we were taught. It was never taught to how do you put yourself in a better position so that you don't have to use force. And some of the examples are, if someone's in a room by themselves with a knife to their throat, do you really have to push your way into that door? Can you stand back, provide yourself a situation to de-escalate without putting yourself at risk and it escalating to a deadly force scenario? So it's just another tool that we want to have in our toolbox and give our officers the best training we can so that we can fulfill our mission. Finally, 2023 saw a lot of our officers honored. So the VACP honored, that's the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police, honored 7 of our officers. The Valor Awards, we had 8 honorees. And then our RPD Salute to Excellence honored 34 members of the Richmond Police Department. Some of the technology that we talk about, we have a NIBIN machine. So that is every semi-automatic pistol that fires and a cartridge is ejected can be put through our NIBIN machine, and it creates the microscopic markings on every casing is similar to a fingerprint. And we tested 1,361 firearms, and we always had this technology at DFS, so the state lab had it. It would just take 3 to 6 months, 4 to 6 months to get the results back, and that was not always really helpful. With this, we're getting it back in days, and we had 238 links to other crime scenes. So we can we can have a really solid case on one case and link it back to a case where we don't have as much information if we can trace that gun. And if there's a quick time, what we call a time to crime, it's really helpful for our investigators. So it's something we're utilizing every day and another part of our strategy to combat gun violence. I get a lot of questions about the skill games. We had a plan in place that mirrored a lot of localities, and we put this messaging out. We haven't had to make any arrests. We haven't gotten a lot of citizen complaints about them, and when we have investigated them, our businesses have been complying with this since July 1st. So we haven't made any arrests. We are prepared to do so. Obviously, it's a Class 6 felony if a manager or an owner of a store has these skill games up and running. But we're letting it be generated by citizen complaints and investigating them afterwards, utilizing a city approach. So not just police, but our code enforcement folks helping us with the skill games. I also wanted to give a quick update on a shooting we had yesterday. Some of you were inquiring, and we'd like to confirm that we did have a 4-year-old with a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the hand in a hotel room in South Richmond on Richmond Highway. Following the investigation, we charged the father. His name is Ladonis Holland, age 32. He's from Richmond. He was charged with abuse and neglect of a child, endangering health, and possession of a firearm by a previously convicted felon. And this is just yet another example of gun storage. Now, Mr. Holland shouldn't have had that firearm. He's a convicted felon, but even if he did, he shouldn't have let his very young son have access to it. And while he just shot in the hand, it could have been, you know, as bad as that is, we know how much worse it could have been. So again, just another reminder from yesterday about the importance of safe storing your firearms. Another thing that we get asked about a lot on New Year's Eve, and I spoke about it to some media outlets, that we want to do some follow-up investigation after New Year's Eve. So we utilize technology, we utilize cameras, and after viewing people discharging firearms in one of our communities in Mosby, we were able to go back and arrest 2 individuals, find the guns that were on video during search warrants, and that was just this week. So really happy with the investigation from our 1st Precinct Focus Mission team to go back after that. I can tell you that myself and the entire command staff worked New Year's Eve night. It's something that many of us have dealt with, but we can tell you that gunfire was ringing out all over, and we keep stressing how important it is to not do that. Obviously, celebratory gunfire has consequences and can kill people, and that's why we take it seriously. And we still have other cases that we're trying to identify people from video. And we got complaints from citizens that night. Obviously, we didn't, if you were out there, you know the scale of it, but we wanted to let the community know that when we get these tips, we follow up on them and do it, you know, even days and weeks after to try to bring this to a successful conclusion.